Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
This is a protest, and this is a riot. If you can't tell the difference, then you are part of the problem.
I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
On Wednesday, January the 18th, scores of radical leftists are planning their devilry. We know this because of a leaked tape. Leanne, if you can believe this, I know Alex has covered it and so is Owen this morning, and you guys talked about it briefly. You hear this propagandist voice talk about how they've got these mass chaotic events planned and with starting points and locations, and the absolute ridiculousness of this, where they just want to create this chaos.
They are planning terror attacks. They are planning terror attacks in Washington, D.C. That's the definition of a terror attack, is to terrorize people for political ends. They're actually on this video talking about deploying muriatic acid at the deplorable.
They're talking about, okay, so these ball crushing, Operation Ball Crusher is what it's called. No pun intended with that, because they literally are trying to attack an inaugural ball. I was just in D.C. this weekend myself, and you can see police barricades going up. It is being locked down like Fort Knox right now in preparation for this. We've covered, this inside scoop of how they're going to try to take down and create as much chaos as possible. Meanwhile, members on Capitol Hill that are of a certain party, and I really hate to be divisive, so I'm not going to name them out, but 20 of them are calling for this sit-out of Trump's inauguration, like bratty, petulant children that lost, and so we're just going to stay home.
Right. Well, you can see, if that's what their leaders are doing, if the leaders within there at the Capitol, if they're also going to be doing a lot of this infighting, well, then it trickles down to the people on the street. And of course, that they say that they are going to do everything they possibly can to try and stop people from being able to access the inauguration. They're planning everything. They're going to put up barricades. They're going to be doing their stop war all day along the parade route. So after the inauguration itself, they're going to have all these protests going along with the parade. There's 6,000 participants in this inaugural parade. So then you're going to have all your anti-protest. The thing that gets me is that they are calling this anti-fascist protest. They want to stop anti-fascism. And how are they going to go about doing that? By being violent and bullying. We had several people have to actually get out of from performing in the inauguration because they were receiving death threats. Andrea Bocelli, the blind tenor, was getting death threats. And now, of course, one of the singers, Jackie Evancho, she's still going to sing. And guess what? She's got a transgender sister who also supports the fact that she's planning on singing at Trump's inauguration. It should be about bringing people together, bringing the country together, not dividing people. So, everyone that's there with Donald Trump is going to take back LGBT, as far as their progress. No, it's freaking mental.
Utter garbage. They're lies. They're divisive lies. They're designed to separate our country, to tear us apart. And honestly, not only are we seeing planned protests doing this, members of Capitol Hill, even President Obama, members of his own cabinet and agencies, specifically John Brennan, who said that Trump's Nazi Germany tweet about U.S. agencies was outrageous. So he's calling President-elect Trump not legitimate, if you will, which is exactly the same sentiment that Representative John Lewis said regarding Trump. But meanwhile, if you can only imagine a Republican using the same words that John Lewis has used and John Brennan about Trump, trying to delegitimize him even before he's in office. We've also seen this out of John Kerry, who called Trump inappropriate for knocking Merkel's refugee policy. So he's got all of these multi-level attacks happening, trying to make him seem not credible and not legitimate, even prior to assuming office. And I know you and I talked about this case.
Meanwhile, this is, President Obama, who went and lectured people in the UK about Brexit, and of course, single-handedly probably caused those people to vote in favor of Brexit, because they said, why the heck is President Obama coming and lecturing us about what we need to do in our country? So then they have the audacity to say that Donald Trump shouldn't be talking about what other people are doing with their countries. He's going to be the president of the most powerful country in the world.
It's absurd. So specifically going back to what John Kerry said for a minute, because it is like he's doing a comedic skit. If you read this, you're like, wait a second, this is not a piece of comedy. He's serious. I thought, frankly, it was inappropriate for a president-elect of the United States to be stepping into the politics of other countries in quite a direct manner. Oh, really? When has that ever bothered you, sir? You've meddled in Syria. You've meddled in Ukraine. You've meddled all over the world throughout the Middle East running amok, and yet it's not appropriate for a president-elect to comment on the refugee policies of another country, much less try to destabilize them, which is what you and the current administration has done, specifically with Syria. All he did was comment. It was just a comment.
Well, and the thing that's just, what people need to realize here, just under sort of a microscopic lens, is that that's what they're doing sort of globally to disrupt and foment this unrest. But that's the exact same thing that we're seeing now within the interworkings of our own Congress. Now, we know that there's always kind of a little bit of a roadblock there. Everyone's kind of complaining how they never get anything done. Meanwhile, we've got now the Republicans controlling the House and the Senate and the White House, so they actually have the opportunity to get some things done. But we have the Democrats, basically at least 20 of them that are sitting out Trump's inauguration. They're basically saying, hey, we're not going to be working with you at all. Chuck Schumer came out and said, you know what, the GOP shouldn't expect any help from Schumer or any of the Democrats on the Obamacare replacement. He says, if they want to rip health care away from 22 million Americans, they don't get to blame us for not cobbling something back together. No, first of all, the American people are blaming you for cobbling something together that you said you had to pass it to find out what was in it. You knew it was going to be such a huge debacle. It's been a debacle from the beginning. Donald Trump has said that he doesn't want to repeal everything he'd like to keep some of the provisions in the Affordable Care Act, the things that work. But you know what? Frankly, I don't think the GOP wants your help cobbling together a replacement plan. And in fact, they've got at least 6 different versions. Rand Paul has been making the rounds. He's previewing the Obamacare replacement plan all week this week. He hit out on CNN today. And the plan that they are talking about is to get affordable care, actual affordable care to every single American in the United States. And of course, Donald Trump backed Rand Paul on this, saying we need to repeal and replace on the same day. So I just think, like Chuck Schumer, what a smug comment to make that they need your help. And they've been like begging for this opportunity to show the American people. And I think the American people are going to hold them to account. Look, you've got all the power. All the cards are in your hands right now. You guys better bring it to the table and show the Democrats we don't need your help, frankly, nor your smug attitude.
Well, he has people like Chuck Schumer on one side that are open about their disdain for Donald Trump. That we understand that they're enemies of capitalism, of free markets, of people being able to choose what kind of health care they want. And let's just face it, Obamacare is not affordable. We know that the premium aspect for 2017 alone, it is going to be so unaffordable for most Americans. Premiums are going to skyrocket 3 times, according to our own Department of Health, so our National Institute for Health, rather. I mean, it's every number says it is not affordable, Leanne. Not only that, we've got Chuck Schumer, which I actually appreciate the fact that you know where he's coming from, but you've got people on the other side of the aisle like John McCain, Lindsey Graham, people like this Marco Rubio, who are actively trying to stop his confirmations, who are admitting to giving dossiers of information that were fake to the FBI to indict a president before he even takes office, who go on, the boob channel, the national boobs, if you will, these 2 idiots. Excuse me, I know we should have respect for our senators, but what they say, it is just impossible to take them seriously because you think that, they go on CNN and they try to indict him. Look, he's got a tough fight ahead of him, but what we do know is we've got the votes in the House and the Senate to repeal and replace Obamacare, and it looks like they're working through the specifics now, which is the best news.
Absolutely. And what I think is very interesting, you actually had Anderson Cooper kind of taking what John Lewis said, kind of taking him to task, saying when John Lewis said that he doesn't see President-elect Donald Trump as a legitimate president, Anderson Cooper said, you know what, if Republicans had been saying this about President-elect Hillary Clinton, Democrats would be up in arms, which is absolutely the case. Actually, years ago, when they were saying President Obama was an illegitimate president, not legitimate, that was racist for you to infer that. But it's really interesting because let's take a look at that. Would Hillary Clinton be considered a legitimate president? Or, we saw from WikiLeaks that the DNC was actively colluding with the mainstream media to get her elected. They didn't care what the American people wanted. But also she was under active FBI investigation. Now, of course, they were able to kind of close that case against her personally in her private server. But let's not forget that the Clinton Foundation is actually still under investigation. So the Daily Caller,
scrambling to close it.
Exactly.
They can't close the door fast enough. Like that's going to matter.
If it was legit and everything was fine, why shut it down?
Exactly.
And we were kind of asking that because they had announced internally in September that they were going to start cutting jobs. So people that were working with the Clinton Foundation, they started looking for other jobs or accepting other jobs at the time. And this was kind of in the thought that Hillary Clinton was going to get elected. So they were already shutting it down, knowing that there were some issues there because this, like I said, the Clinton Foundation is under active investigation regarding allegations of corruption during the same time that Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. Mm-hmm. So they were shutting it down, but now the Clinton Foundation is laying off 22 staffers. Heads are beginning to roll. They're shutting it down entirely. It's
like a fire sale going on right now. It's because they know the pay-to-play aspects of Hillary Clinton. It is absolutely done. The woman represented Saudi Arabia. They gave her money to represent their interest while she was pretending to be this advocate for American people, specifically American women and children. No, my friend, she was actually an advocate for the Saudis, and nothing is more apparent than taking money from these rogue and foreign governments that have serious humanitarian issues, specifically when it comes to women and children, taking their money, and they can't close the door fast enough. The good news is, though, that she has a paper trail behind her that is about 10 years old.
Right.
So,
and we might actually see some justice served with that since she's no longer being protected by the Democratic, the DNC, and those elites. But it's interesting how we know with the Saudi Arabian prince coming out saying that that they've given at least 20% of Hillary Clinton's campaign funds coming from Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. Why weren't they accused of influencing the election? But
instead of the Russians,
right,
because there is an actual basis, right? You don't hear Vladimir Putin saying, what we actively gave to the campaign of Donald Trump. These are serious issues, folks. Meanwhile, you have the kingdom saying that they did give to the Clintons, and there isn't anything more representative of pay to play with her. Textbook example of this, if you look up the dictionary definition of corruption, it's her face with this foundation, literally. And speaking of the FBI, because I wanted to touch on this really briefly, and it's not really related to anything we're talking about, it's just an update to a story that we've covered a lot because of our refugee policy, for example, and our mass immigration. The FBI, speaking of the FBI, they have arrested the wife of the killer in the Orlando mass shooting. And the issue, it's about, exactly, this Noor Selman, and of course her husband, I'm not even going to say allegedly because we know that he killed 49 people and wounded dozens in the nightclub. And she was taken into custody by the FBI outside of her home in San Francisco. And prosecutors, they're saying that she was obstructing justice in this case. We saw the same thing with the Farouks regarding the San Bernardino issue where the mother-in-law was living in the home, concealing. Everybody knew around them. And what did she know and what is she hiding? And it looks like they're cracking down on family members now of terrorists because you know what? There is a tie, there is a connection. Somebody knows something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. She's his wife. They're in intimate, close quarters, and everyone who knew Omar Mateen said that he was always angry, always ranting, very upset. He didn't try to hide his political beliefs or his ideological beliefs at all whatsoever. So of course, his wife is going to understand that as well. And that's going to be sort of interesting with all of these terroristic attacks that are planned for the inauguration. It's going to be really interesting to see the type of pushback. If anything major does happen there, we know ISIS was actually actively calling for terror attacks to happen during the inauguration throughout the United States. I actually reported last week how there was a shootout actually there at the Mexican border in one of these towns where they were saying that ISIS was colluding with the drug cartels to take on, because they, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So obviously they both want to send Donald Trump a message of who's in charge. So we really have no idea what's going on. So it'll be interesting to see how these protesters, these anti-fascist protesters, are going to be treated. It's a different sort of thing there when you're making these terror threats in D.C. during an inauguration. It's totally different thing.
Don't you find it funny that, okay, so we're talking about the tolerant left, the people that preach, political correctness to the nth degree. If they don't get their way, the alternative measure is just to burn it all down. I think that is so funny. I mean, listening to that leaked tape and talking about the mass chaos that they want to incite, you touched on that beautifully. ISIS wants the destruction of America, and they want us to not have a secure border. So what does that say to you? That ISIS would be on the side of liberals because they also think that a secure border is a problem. You know what? They're aligning with ISIS. That's hilarious. And it's not hilarious in a funny way. It's hilarious in an ironic way that they are aligned with terrorists and they're
and that these terrorist
terrorism.
groups are actually so insane that they can call themselves the anti-fascists as they're making death threats and, putting out these violent things, saying that they're going to deploy acid at the deplorable. That is insane to me. Now, one thing I just kind of wanted to close this segment with, we kind of alluded to the Donald Trump talking and his press secretary saying that alternative media and bloggers could become part of the press corps. We know the White House press corps is like shaking in their boots at that, freaking out. What do you mean you're going to let the alternative media and bloggers become part of the elite? Are we going to get to go to Nerd Prom? Or do you need a date to Nerd Prom there? So so they're freaking out about this. And Alex Jones is actually going to be breaking this story tomorrow at 1:30 on the Alex Jones Show. He wants to talk about the persecution of the press. That is going to be a big breaking report. He's going to have that at 1:30 with a special guest. And also James O'Keefe with Project Veritas is going to be dropping part 2 of these explosive videos.
In case you haven't heard, Infowars has become the most influential media outlet in America. We're making freedom go viral. And now we are proud to announce a new weapon in the epic battle against the globalists. Infowars Prime, where you can watch live high-definition feeds of the Alex Jones Show, plus exclusive insider videos from the Infowars crew and behind-the-scenes action. Go to Infowars.com/app and download today. Infowars Prime is available right now for your iPhone or Android. You will have access to exclusive videos that you can't see anywhere else. And that means live coverage of events and breaking news on location as it happens. You can also take advantage of amazing deals from the Infowars store that are only available for Infowars Prime subscribers. That's Infowars Prime at Infowars.com/app. And if you can hear my voice, you are the resistance.